Welcome back to the channel of truth, trust, and transparency. Now, on today's episode, I wanted to break down the home guaranteed scheme. Unless you've been living under a rock, you would have heard in the last 24 hours that Anthony Albanese, the Australian Prime Minister, has made a series of changes to this policy, and I'm gonna give my 10 cents on whether or not I think this is a positive or a negative in terms of what it will do for first home buyers and also what it will do for the property market. Now, the good news is that all the changes that I run through now are going to be live and active from the 1st of October. That date has been brought forward, which is good. It means these will be implemented rather quickly. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the scheme, how it works is first home buyers are coming up with a 5% deposit. The government was guaranteeing the rest, meaning there was no LMI that needed to be paid. First-home buyers could access particular properties. There were all sorts of caps in terms of the value of the property they could buy, the amount of income that they could earn, and also the amount of seats or the amount of places available for this particular scheme. However, Anthony Albanese has announced that there is now going to be no caps. It is uncapped for anyone wanting to get into the market, any first home buyer, and they can do so as long as they meet the eligibility criteria. There used to be income caps, now depending what you earned personally or if you were or if you had a partner, what you guys both earned, but now the caps have been wiped, meaning it doesn't matter how much you earn, as long as you're a first home buyer. This is a scheme that you can now use and exploit. Now, for New South Wales and the capital city and regional centres, the previous cap was $900,000. It has now been increased to $1.5 million, giving first home buyers in those New South Wales areas a lot more to choose from. Victoria has went from $800,000 up to $950,000. Queensland, $700,000 up to $1 million. Western Australia has went up from $600,000 to $850,000. South Australia has went up from $600,000 to $900,000. Tasmania has went from $600,000 up to $700,000. ACT has went from $750,000 up to $1 million, and Northern Territory actually remains unchanged at $600,000. Now, the positive is that this scheme is available now across 30 lenders in Australia. So it's not as if this is, something is only available through one lender and it's going to be an absolute nightmare for them to be able to service all these new loans. However, I think there's a couple of things that we need to think about and remember here. Now, as you may or may not know, LMI, and if you've been watching my whiteboard sessions over the past few months, is that LMI, deposit are only two of the costs associated with getting into that property market or getting into that purchase. The other elephant in the room that has not been spoken about is the stamp duty that is eligible. And I think this is a big missing piece to this entire conundrum. Because the government, as we know, they get you on income tax, they get you when you're buying, they get you when you're holding property, they get you when you're selling. Stamp duty still, in my opinion, has this massive question mark around it. Now, why? Well, now take New South Wales for example. A lot of the stamp duty exemptions are for properties for first home buyers. A lot of the properties under $800,000. Now, from $800,000 to $1 million, there is also a discounted rate. However, what about $1 million plus? These people, these first home buyers, if they still need to pay that full freight. Now, here's the thing: if you're a first home buyer in New South Wales and you think, oh, this is great, I can buy up to $1.5 million and I can get in there with only a 5% deposit. The issue is that, you only need to pay 5% deposit, anything up until 1.5. But if you're going to buy, for example, a $1.2 million property as a first home buyer in New South Wales, 1.2, you're above the stamp duty exemptions. So you'll actually need to pay around about $48,000 in stamp duty to get into that particular property. So do I think that it's a good thing that there's a 5% deposit? Yeah, of course, it allows more people to get into the market quicker than having to save up. But I think a lot of people are forgetting that there's actually more costs associated with getting into the market, because even at a $1.2 million price range, call it $60,000 is your 5% deposit. You then still need your $48,000 of stamp duty, which is meaning that this whole entire exercise is still $108,000 plus your legals and all your other closing costs. So I think the messaging from the government, what I've seen in interviews, has been, they can get into as little as 5%. I think we need to as well address this stamp duty issue. It is still going to be a factor that prohibits first-home buyers getting into the market, especially those in, for example, the Sydney market. We know property is expensive here. This is where I'm from. Above $1 million, they're still going to pay full stamp duty on that property purchase. Now, if Albanese wants to come in and wipe stamp duty for first-home buyers up until those price limits that they've set for this 5% deposit, that would be an absolute step, a positive step for home buyers. But in my opinion, the next thing that we're not talking about here as well is the fact that you're only putting down a 5% deposit. Now, again, as you know, and if you've been watching my whiteboard sessions, the most worrying thing about a 5% deposit is the 95% of debt that you're holding on that asset. We know cost of living's bad. We know people are struggling to save. I think when you have 95% of debt too on an asset, you need to remember as well, I think you need to understand that the cost of money is going to start to add up. Now, it's only a little bit. It's obviously, look, I've crunched some numbers here and I'll run through them. So if you're going to buy a $750,000 house and you put down, say, your 10% deposit, your loan's going to be $675,000. Now, at 6% P&I, you're going to pay $933 a week or $1,867 a fortnight. And over that 30-year loan, you're going to pay back the bank $781,000 in interest. Now, if your loan was $712,000, which is only a 5% deposit, your cost per week goes up to $985 compared to $933. So another $50 a week, or as we know, around about $100 a fortnight extra. And you'll also pay back the bank $824,000 in interest. So you're paying back an extra $40,000 of interest over the life of that loan for borrowing that extra amount. Seems like actually a really good scheme if you were a bank and incentivizing the government to put it in. On a $1 million purchase, if you put down a 10% deposit, again, 6%, you're paying $1,244 per week, $1,244 per week, or $2,489 a fortnight. You're paying back the bank a total of $1,041,000 over the life of the loan. You'd be paying, whereas if you went at $950, slightly more debt, you'd pay back $1,313 a week. So you're almost looking at $100 extra a week, or $2,628 per fortnight, and paying back the loan and paying back the bank $1,099,000 or an extra $50,000 in interest just for borrowing that extra $50,000. So I just want people to make sure as well that, and remember, if you're going into a deposit, if you're going into a purchase at a 5% loan, and no doubt that this scheme has been created for those people that maybe aren't, those people that just want to get in the property market, just do your numbers would be my advice, because again, the bigger the deposit you put down is the smaller the debt is, the smaller the repayments. You have to weigh up your opportunity costs, and if it's going to absolutely take you an extra 12, 18, 24 months, then of course, in my opinion, you're better off getting in the market now and riding the growth of that property up. You just need to do your numbers and know that there is a cost to only a 5% deposit. What impact is this going to have with the property market? Obviously, enabling more people to get into the property market at those price ranges would increase the competition. When you increase the competition of the amount of people trying to buy in those price ranges, what do we start to see in prices when we have that competition? I think it will cause prices to increase. Especially look at Sydney, sub $1.5 million range. There is your choices are going to be limited if it is, say, for example, a house. So I think we'll see that increased demand. We'll see that increased property prices, meaning more properties will move to above those particular thresholds, and hopefully push up the values of all the others. So if you're a property investor, I think it means you have potentially more competition, especially in, your Melbournes and Adelaides, where the price caps there for this scheme is $950 and $900. I still know investors that are buying at those particular rates. So that's what I think it's going to do for the market. It's going to create more competition. It's obviously going to allow more people to get in, but if you're watching this and you're a first-time buyer, just do your numbers. I mean, there is an opportunity cost to be able to save a 10% deposit. But if you have it and you're not using it, just calculate those extra repayments. And those extra repayments are the extra money you have to outlay each week. And then your serviceability on your non-deductible debt. Because if you're only putting down 5% deposit, you have no income coming in because that's your PPR. And when you go back to the bank and you go for a refinance, when you go back to the bank and you're looking to be able to purchase more and you go, hey, I want to buy an investment property. Then the bank goes, well, look, mister, you've got a 95% LVR on your PPR, and don't be surprised if your borrowing capacity is going to be absolutely squashed after this particular scheme. But you might not be out there hunting for investments, and you might just be looking to get in the market as a first-home buyer, and that's what you're going to be happy with, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. But would love to hear from my YouTube community. You guys have been super helpful. You guys have been super across it, commenting on almost all my videos. I really appreciate it. Would love to hear what your thoughts are on this, but that is what my particular thoughts are. Albanese, if you're watching or when you watch this, if you're a man of your word and you're actually trying to help, you would also increase the stamp duty thresholds to match these thresholds. Otherwise, it tells me that this is maybe just a sort of voting stunt to help out those first-home buyers when, anything over the stamp duty thresholds mean they're paying full stamp duty anyway, which in most cases will mean they need close to $100,000 to get into these markets if the property purchase price is in that $1 million range or above the stamp duty threshold. So that's my thoughts, feelings, opinions, and emotions. Let me know yours in the comments. And as always, guys, I'll see you tomorrow.